Right now, on apps that you use every single day, a machine is reading your private messages and looking at your photos and deciding whether or not to report you to the police. Not because you did anything, just because you're there, and I want to show you what to do about it. The EU has locked this into law, which we'll talk about later in the video, but this isn't just an EU thing. It's something that's happening all around the world. On Friday night of February 2021, Mark's toddler had a swollen, painful groin infection. He grabbed his Android phone and took photos just to track whether it was getting worse. His wife took his phone and texted the close-ups to her iPhone. She could upload them into the provider's messaging system, and these photos are being sent to a doctor. The doctor diagnosed it, prescribed antibiotics, the kid got better, and that's kind of the entire crime. What they didn't know is that his Android device was auto backing up his photos to Google Photos in the background, something that just happens by default for most people, and Google's AI flagged them. 2 days later, his entire account was locked out. Gmail, Drive, Photos, and his Google Find number all gone at once. Google reported him to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who's passed it to the San Francisco police, and he was under investigation for about 10 months. This wasn't even a one-time thing. There was another New York Times story that found a second dad in Houston that went through the same exact situation. So of course you hear these things, and especially with EU passing Chat Control 1.0, which guarantees this into law and actually tries to make it so these companies can do it more frequently, there's a lot to unpack here in terms of how we can tackle this. Let's dive into it. To actually explain what scanning is and how this happens, the really simple starting point is, can a company read your stuff? If the company holds the keys to your data, it can scan your stuff. Watch out for terms like encrypted at rest and encrypted in transit. That just refers to technology that's used to encrypt your data. This is different from something like a zero-knowledge provider or an end-to-end encrypted provider that directly speaks to the fact that they don't control the encryption keys, you do. So that's the simple question. Can the company read this? That's the one thing you have to remember for this video. If the answer is yes, then they might be able to scan your data in ways that you don't consent to doing. In terms of the photo scanning in particular, there's a few ways that this can happen. The first method, which is matching against a known database. So every photo gets fingerprinted and compared against a list of known illegal images. It sounds precise, and it mostly is, but it means every single photo you send or back up is getting checked always, forever, which has obvious privacy implications. The second thing is AI guessing at new images. This is the one that really freaks people out, as it should, as this is still experimental technology. There's no database to match and guarantee it. It's just a model that looks at a brand new photo and guesses as a machine whether it's abuse or not. That's what hit Mark. It's what hit a lot of these other people. It's a machine that just looked at a sick kid and guessed the wrong thing that was happening. On a similar note, the third type of scanning is a bit more indirect, and it can target actual conversations and messages. This is things like grooming detection. It doesn't really match anything, it just reads words and judges intent. Things that can obviously trip this up are sarcasm, two adults flirting, a parent texting about picking up their kid from swim practice. All of it's gonna go through a model that decides whether you sound like a predator or not. Now, these are the actual technologies that are being implemented and endorsed by things like Chat Control. But here's the thing, the actual numbers don't paint a positive picture. Germany's federal police said that 48% of the alerts they received from these programs aren't criminally relevant. That means nearly half, 99,000 wrong reports in 2024 alone. The EU Commission's own report found the AI systems for new material gets it wrong up to 20% of the time, which is 1 in 5. Swiss police put their number around 80% irrelevant. Irish police found only about 20% of what they got was actually abuse material. And this all, again, is downstream of the fact that a service can read and has liability and responsibility to make sure that people on its platform aren't using it for abuse because they can read your data. And that is the ultimate problem in most of these situations. So let's actually talk about what to do. There's 3 levels, and each one is a real place to stop. Most people can even stop at level 1 or 2 and get a majority of the benefits, but I like to detail the maybe like good, better, best approach to this kind of thing. In terms of easy and free stuff to start using, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, just turn on advanced data protection in your iCloud settings. This is one of the highest value things in this entire video. It's free, it's already on your phone, it takes like 2 minutes, and it makes your iCloud backups and your photos completely end-to-end encrypted so Apple can't read them. Apple normally holds the keys to your data, and they can read your data but not if you enable ADP. Everybody can do this unless you're in the UK, which has actively blocked that, and you should be asking why they're going after it. The only thing with encryption is that you're going to hold your encryption key, so when you set up advanced data protection for the first time, make sure you save that key in a safe place, because if you lose your data, Apple can't help you recover it. This also doesn't encrypt contacts, calendar, and mail, but don't worry because there'll be a few alternatives I'll mention in a second. The second thing I can recommend to everybody is to stop using regular SMS. This is more of an issue in the US, but I know many of you outside the US don't use SMS, but it's still a good reminder to avoid it. These are practically public postcards that everybody can read. So the realistic move for most people, if you're already using it, WhatsApp, I would argue, is a bit better than SMS. As long as it's end-to-end encrypted by default, there's at least a few more protections to prevent mass scanning of your actual raw data. But as I talk about a lot in this content, it is still Meta, which is a big tech company, and the messages might be encrypted, but the metadata isn't, like who you talk to, when, how often. And if your WhatsApp backups aren't encrypted, that is also a readable copy sitting in iCloud or Google Drive that undoes this whole thing. So make sure to encrypt your backup settings in WhatsApp as well. Similarly, it's important to remind people that Instagram DMs just aren't encrypted anymore. Neither is Discord, neither are all these big tech platforms out there. Most of them don't have basic end-to-end encryption, especially in public spaces. And so it's important to A, acknowledge this and be careful of what you're posting on these platforms and assume it can get scanned, or B, just move to safer platforms. I really recommend using Signal. It's kind of the best messenger for the situation, for the most usability and privacy ratio. It's free. It's actually so good that it's the encryption protocol that WhatsApp chooses to use, and it doesn't have the same metadata concerns, and it's not run by a big tech company. So get Signal. It's the best place, and you don't have to use it for all your contacts, but set up the safe space so that when you need to discuss something sensitive and have the guarantee that no one's scanning it, you already have it ready to go. In the past, it was a lot harder to recommend alternatives to Google and Apple that were like encrypted suites, but that's no longer as much of an issue. Nowadays, we have Proton and Tuda, who aren't just email companies anymore. These are completely free to try and open source suites that are encrypted. They encrypt your email, your cloud storage, your photos, your calendar, your notes, your password manager. Proton is more of that robust suite. Tuda has a few less things, but they're both out there trying to encrypt your most sensitive information. Now, there are individual encrypted services, and I cover all these on our spa tools if you want to see like an encrypted photos provider, an encrypted notes provider, and you can pick and choose your tech stack with encrypted services. But if you just want an easy alternative to Google, things like Proton even have a one-click import from Google. And again, you can pick and choose other encrypted individual services, but I just think the suite is what's going to be easier for a lot of people. And the third level is the concept of self-hosting. So back here, it's actually that black thing right there is a NAS that allows me to pretty much have my own cloud at home. You can host open source software on it. You can keep the data on your local network. You can open it up to the outside world. You can set it so it's only accessible through a VPN. This is all more complex, but it's important to mention because some of you might realize, oh, I don't trust even some of these other companies. And so if you want to put the data fully under your control, that is an option. Just be aware it's now in your control. So you have to set it up properly. You have to maintain it. You have to make sure you have power at home. You always have a going internet. So think about those things as well. It's not a foolproof solution, but if you do want full control, that's the best way. Now, you might be wondering what I actually run in my personal life. I kind of have a blend of everything. I use Proton Drive a lot. We also have a couple iCloud accounts that we use for production, and those have advanced data protection enabled naturally. I mentioned I have the NAS right there, which I use for mostly archiving at this point. So I use these cloud providers that are encrypted for like ongoing work, but then I do those backups to my own data that I control, which has its own backups and backups because you always want backups. And that is a pretty good lesson here, is that if you are encrypting your own data, you're in control of your data, even if it's on someone else's platform, right? If you lose your keys, they can't help you. So make sure you keep backups of your data, because if you lose access to your account, it's kind of gone. The other thing I think that people miss is encrypted backups and the concept that the people around you being safe keeps you safer as well. You know, if you're messaging someone and your iMessage is fully locked down, you have advanced data protection enabled, but you're messaging something sensitive to your friend and they are not doing encrypted backups because they didn't enable advanced data protection, then your messages are still being swept and could be readable by Apple because of someone else's backup. So it's important to think about the social implications of what you're doing. Now, there is one other thing that's it's a bit more speculative, and I don't want people to get too obsessed with it because there isn't much evidence this is currently a problem. But it's these concepts of local scanning and AI scanning your local device, making encryption completely irrelevant. Now, we don't really see this right now. It's not something that I think is like a priority one concern. I think it's something to maybe flag as a potential concern down the road as we start giving more and more local access to our devices, to AI models and different things that are meant to go in. But as of right now, mobile devices have a pretty cool security system that prevents apps from reading each other's data, and it should have some tight permissioning to make that a little bit harder to do than it sounds. But nothing's impossible. And so if you do want full transparency, open source operating systems like certain custom ROMs might be up your alley if you want to ensure that the code running on your phone is completely open source and transparent. When you put all of this advice together, which I'm sure Tori will put on screen, you actually take control of your life and you don't open yourself up to a situation where a tech company just says, maybe we'll start scanning your messages today. Or, hey, maybe the politicians want to start forcing those companies to scan your messages. So get ahead of it, take control of your digital life. It's very possible to do. A lot of these things are just a few minutes of work and they don't impact your day-to-day life, and they help keep the people around you safe as well. Now, everything I showed you works today and it's not that difficult. So why is anybody still fighting about this? Because there's actually a version of chat control that's coming that's designed to break the exact thing that just protected you. They keep going downstream of things, in the process taking away your control. You see, the EU brought back Chat Control 1.0 that lets companies voluntarily scan private messages. Now, the win of Chat Control 1.0 is that there is an exemption for end-to-end encrypted services, and people celebrate this exemption because encryption is the thing that the law can't reach. But the real fight isn't over. There is a permanent version of all of this that is far worse, which is Chat Control 2.0, and it's still being discussed, it's still being negotiated, and in its most aggressive form, forced client-side scanning, which cracks encrypted apps from the inside on your own device before the message is ever encrypted. That version is aimed directly at the protection that you just set up. Negotiations resume in September. 5 rounds have already failed, but Chat Control 1.0 also had a moment where it failed. So this fall is where it gets decided, at least for then. So make sure you're contacting your representatives, especially in the EU. Go to fightchatcontrol.eu if you're in the European Union. But also, guys, we're seeing these kinds of discussions globally right now. So just because you're not in the EU doesn't mean you shouldn't be implementing this advice and also contacting your politicians. I think that the concept of owning your own data and controlling who gets access to it is a basic human right, and I think that taking back control of it and using encrypted services is what owning your digital life in 2026 actually looks like. This story moves every single week, and the real fight is happening this fall, so if you want to stay ahead of it without doom scrolling, that's what the Surveillance Support newsletter is for. It's completely free to join. I publish it every week. It's supposed to be like a 5-minute read to keep it simple. Join it below, and I'll see you all next time on Techlore.